When Michael Jordan, basketball legend and billionaire, heard that his younger brother James had canceled his wedding due to money problems, he didn't just write a check. Instead, Michael came up with a secret plan that would help his brother while protecting his pride. Working behind the scenes, Michael began calling wedding vendors one by one, creating a web of lucky coincidences that would give James and his fiancée Tina their dream wedding without them knowing who was behind it all. The venue suddenly found an accounting error. The caterer offered a special discount. The florist had an unexpected opening. As these miracles kept happening, James grew suspicious, but couldn't prove his famous brother was pulling strings. Michael's quiet generosity showed that sometimes the greatest gift isn't just solving a problem, it's how you solve it. This is a story about family bonds, pride, and the different ways we show love. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Michael Jordan's spacious home in Jupiter, Florida. The house sat on the edge of his own golf course, the Grove 23rd, named after his famous jersey number. Michael sipped his coffee on the back porch, enjoying the peace and quiet. At 59 years old, the basketball legend had settled into a comfortable retirement from team ownership, focusing on his family, his businesses, and his favorite hobby, golf. The morning air was warm but not yet hot, typical for a Florida spring day. Michael planned to play 18 holes later with some friends. He scrolled through messages on his phone, checking in on his Jordan brand business and some charity work he was planning. The phone rang suddenly, breaking the morning calm. Michael glanced at the screen and smiled when he saw his younger brothers. "Name? James, how's it going?" Michael answered cheerfully. "You calling to finally take me up on that golf challenge?" The silence on the other end lasted a bit too long. Michael sat up straighter in his chair. "James? You there?" he asked, his voice now serious. "Yeah, I'm here, Mike," came the reply, but the voice sounded strange, thick with emotion. Michael's grip tightened on his phone. "What's wrong? Is everyone okay?" He heard his brother take a deep breath. "Everyone's healthy. It's not that," James said finally. "It's about the wedding." Michael relaxed slightly. His brother James had been planning to marry his longtime girlfriend, Tina, in 2 months. They'd been together for 8 years, and Michael had been looking forward to celebrating with them in Charlotte. "What about the wedding? You getting cold feet?" Michael joked, trying to lighten the mood. "We canceled it," James said simply, his voice cracking slightly. Michael stood up from his chair, nearly spilling his coffee. "Canceled? What happened? Between you and Tina?" "Nothing happened with us. We're still together. We still want to get married, but—" James paused again. "But what, James?" "Talk to me," Michael urged gently. "It's the money, Mike," James finally admitted. "We lost our deposits when I had to use our savings for Mom's medical bills last month. Then the venue raised their prices, and the new caterer wants more than we can afford. We tried to make it work, but yesterday we had to call everyone and cancel. We'll just go to the courthouse someday." Michael's heart sank. He knew his brother had always been proud and independent, running his own store in Charlotte and living a modest life. James had always walked his own path, never asking for help from his famous brother. "James, why didn't you tell me about Mom's bills? I could have—" "That's exactly why I didn't tell you," James cut him off. "I don't want to be the brother always asking for handouts. You've done enough for the family already." Michael thought about their childhood home in Wilmington, North Carolina, where they'd grown up with their parents and 3 other siblings. Their father, James Sr., had always taught them to stand on their own feet, but also to help each other when needed. "It's not a handout between brothers," Michael said softly. "Remember what Dad always said? Family first," they both said at the same time. and Michael could hear the sad smile in his brother's voice. "I know, Mike, but this is different. The wedding was our dream, mine and Tina's. We saved for 3 years. It just wasn't meant to be now." "How's Tina taking it?" Michael asked, thinking about his soon-to-be sister-in-law, a kindergarten teacher with a warm smile who had been wonderful for James. "She says she doesn't care, that she just wants to be married to me. But I've seen her looking at those wedding magazines for years. She deserves her special day." James's voice dropped to a whisper. "I feel like I failed her." Michael felt a lump in his throat. His brother, who had cheered louder than anyone at his basketball games, who had defended him from bullies when they were kids, who had been there for him when their father died so suddenly in 1993, was hurting. "You didn't fail anyone, James. Life throws curves sometimes," Michael said firmly. "Listen, I've got a meeting soon, but I'll call you back later today, okay? We'll figure something out." "There's nothing to figure out, Mike. I just needed to tell you why we canceled. Don't worry about us. We'll be fine." After a few more minutes of talk, they hung up. Michael put down his phone and walked to the edge of his property, looking out over the perfectly maintained golf course that bore his name. The irony wasn't lost on him. He had more money than he could spend in a lifetime, while his own brother couldn't afford a wedding. Michael Jordan had faced many challenges in his life: tough playoff games, business setbacks, personal tragedies. But few had hit him this hard. This wasn't about basketball or business. This was family. He pulled out his phone again and called his personal assistant. "Marcus, I need you to clear my schedule for the next few days," he said decisively. Something important came up with family. "Of course, Mr. Jordan. Anything I can help with?" Marcus asked. Michael looked back at his house, thinking about his brother's pride and how careful he would need to be. "Actually, yes," Michael replied slowly, a plan already forming in his mind. "I need you to get me some information. Very quietly. I need to know about a canceled wedding in Charlotte." As Michael began explaining his idea, he felt the same determination that had helped him win 6 NBA championships. His brother had always been there for him. Now it was his turn to be there for James. Whether James knew it or not, Michael hung up the phone and walked back into his house, his mind racing with ideas. He headed to his office, a room filled with memorabilia from his basketball career. 6 championship trophies gleamed in a glass case. Framed jerseys hung on the walls. Photos of great moments covered another wall. Dunking from the free throw line, holding up championship trophies, playing baseball during his break from basketball. But it was the family photos that caught his eye now. Michael walked over to a large framed picture of the entire Jordan family taken on Christmas nearly 40 years ago. There they all were, his parents, James Sr. and Dolores, standing proud behind their 5 children. Michael, his older brothers Ronnie and Larry, younger brother James Jr. and their sister Roslyn. Michael touched the glass over his father's face gently. James Sr. had been gone for over 30 years now, murdered in 1993 while napping in his car. The pain of that loss had changed Michael forever. His father had been his biggest supporter, attending every game he could, offering advice and encouragement. "What would you do, Dad?" Michael whispered to the photo. He already knew the answer. James Sr. had always taught them that family was everything. "You can have all the money and fame in the world," he used to say, "but without family to share it with, it means nothing." Michael sat down in his leather chair and closed his eyes, remembering their childhood home in Wilmington, North Carolina. It wasn't a fancy house, but it was always full of love and laughter. All the Jordan kids were competitive, especially Michael and Larry, who battled fiercely in their backyard basketball games. Larry had been the better player when they were young, pushing Michael to improve. People often forgot that part of Michael's story. Michael smiled at the memory of those games, how they'd play until it was too dark to see the ball, their mother calling them in for dinner. His thoughts turned to James, the youngest brother. Though quieter than the others, James had a kind heart and steady nature. He'd been only 11 when Michael left for college at North Carolina. By the time Michael was winning championships with the Chicago Bulls, James was finding his own path, never wanting to live in his famous brother's shadow. The Jordan family had stayed tight-knit despite Michael's fame. His mother Dolores made sure of that, keeping everyone grounded. She'd never been impressed by the fame or fortune. "You put your pants on one leg at a time like everyone else," she would remind Michael whenever he came home, no matter how many trophies he'd won. Michael opened his eyes and pulled out his phone again, scrolling to a family group chat. The latest messages were about his mother's health scare last month, tests and doctor visits that had ended with good news but expensive bills. James hadn't mentioned money problems in the chat. He'd simply written, "Got mom's bills covered, don't worry." Pride. That was the Jordan family trait that united them all. Sometimes it was a strength. Sometimes it got in the way. Michael remembered when he was cut from his high school varsity basketball team as a sophomore. He could have asked his parents to talk to the coach, but instead, he used that disappointment to fuel his determination. He practiced harder than ever before, growing several inches that year, and made the team the next season. That same pride now kept James from asking for help. "Marcus," Michael called to his assistant, who appeared in the doorway, "can you get me the names of the top wedding venues in Charlotte and find out which ones had cancellations recently?" "Of course, Mr. Jordan," Marcus replied, typing notes into his tablet. "Anything else?" "Yes, I need to know about wedding planners in Charlotte, too. The best ones, but discreet. Someone who can keep a secret." Michael stood up and walked to the window. "And book me a flight to Charlotte for tomorrow morning. Don't tell anyone I'm coming." "Not even your brother?" Marcus asked. "Especially not my brother," Michael said firmly. "This needs to be handled carefully." After Marcus left, Michael called his sister Rosalind, the only person he trusted completely with this delicate situation. "You want to do what?" Rosalind asked after Michael explained his plan. "I want to save James's wedding without him knowing I paid for it," Michael repeated. "I need your help." "Mike, that's sweet, but James will figure it out. He's not dumb." "Not if we do it right," Michael insisted. "Remember when Dad used to leave money in Mom's purse and pretend he didn't know how it got there?" Rosalind laughed. "And Mom always knew it was him, but pretended she didn't, so he could feel good about helping. I see where you're going with this." "Exactly. James might suspect, but if we do this right, he can accept the help without feeling like he failed." There was a pause before Rosalind spoke again. "This is why you were always my favorite brother." "Don't let the others hear you say that," Michael joked, feeling better already. "So you'll help?" "Of course." "What do you need me to do?" Michael outlined his plan. Rosalind would contact Tina, James's fiancée, asking about the canceled wedding, as if she'd just heard the news. She would get the details, venues, caterers, florists, everything they had planned before canceling. "Just don't make it obvious you're fishing for information," Michael cautioned. "Please," Rosalind scoffed. "I've been keeping secrets in this family since before you could dunk. I've got this." After finishing the call with his sister, Michael walked over to another photo on his wall. This one showed a younger Michael with his arm around James at the Bulls championship celebration in 1998. James was beaming with pride for his brother. Michael remembered how James had defended him in school, when other kids were jealous of his growing basketball success. how James had sat with him for hours after their father died, sometimes not speaking, just being there. How James had never once asked for money or favors, even when times were tough. "Your turn to win, little brother," Michael said to the photo, picked up his phone one more time and called his old friend and teammate, Charles Oakley, who lived in Charlotte. "Oak, I need a favor, man," Michael said when Oakley answered, "and you can't tell anyone about it. Not a soul." As the sun set over his Florida home, Michael Jordan, the man known for his fierce competitiveness on the basketball court, showed a different kind of determination. This wasn't about winning a game or making a business deal. This was about family. This was about love. And Michael Jordan played to win. The next morning in Charlotte, North Carolina, James Jordan Jr. unlocked the front door of his store, Jordan's Corner, a sports memorabilia shop in a small shopping center. The morning light cast long shadows through the windows as James flipped on the lights and began his daily routine. The walls were covered with framed jerseys, signed basketballs, and photos of sports heroes. Yes, there was plenty of Michael Jordan merchandise. The customers expected that. But James had worked hard to make the store about more than just his famous brother. James was 46 years old now, with the same warm smile as his father, but quieter, more reserved than the rest of the Jordan family. He had the same competitive spirit, just channeled differently. While growing up in Wilmington, he'd learned early that basketball wouldn't be his path. Not with Larry and Michael, setting such a high bar. Instead, he'd found his own way. As he checked the register for the day, his phone buzzed with a text from Tina. "How are you feeling today? Love you." The message read. James sighed. Tina had been so understanding about canceling the wedding. Too understanding. That almost made it worse. "Doing okay? Love you too. See you tonight," he typed back. The truth was, he wasn't doing okay. He had spent 3 years saving for the perfect wedding, wanting to give Tina the day she deserved. They had planned everything. A beautiful ceremony at the Moorhead Manor, a historic home in Charlotte, with gardens for the pictures, a reception with all their friends and family. Tina had found a perfect dress. Their friends had booked flights, and then his mother's health scare happened. The tests, the specialists, the hospital stays. The bills had piled up quickly. James had used their wedding savings without hesitation. Family came first. His mother had recovered fully, thank goodness. But the wedding fund was gone. They had tried to scale back their plans, looking for cheaper venues, fewer guests, simpler food. But when the original venue kept their deposit after canceling and the new place wanted even more money up front, they had finally given up. "We don't need a fancy wedding," Tina had said, holding his hand across their kitchen table. "I just want to be your wife." Tina Moore was a kindergarten teacher at Charlotte Elementary, patient and kind with a laugh that filled a room. They had met 8 years ago when she came into his store looking for a gift for her nephew. Something about her had caught James's attention immediately. Maybe her smile, or the way she spoke with such passion about her students. Their first date had been coffee, then dinner the next week. Within 6 months, they were inseparable. Tina never cared about James's famous last name. In fact, she'd admitted later she hadn't even made the connection at first. The bell above the shop door jingled, pulling James from his thoughts. His first customer of the day, an older man looking for a birthday gift for his grandson, wandered in. James put on his professional smile and went to help. Throughout the morning, James kept busy with customers, restocking shelves and placing orders. The store didn't make him rich, but it had been steady enough until recently. The economy had been tough on small businesses like his. People had less money for collectibles these days. During a quiet moment around noon, James found himself looking at a framed photo behind the counter. It showed all 5 Jordan siblings at Michael's Hall of Fame induction ceremony. Everyone looked so proud that day. James remembered how his friends in school would ask what it was like being Michael Jordan's brother. The truth was complicated. He was immensely proud of Michael, of course. How could he not be? But living in such a large shadow wasn't easy, especially in North Carolina, where basketball was religion and Michael was its god. Their father had helped. James Sr. had made sure each of his children felt equally valued, equally loved. "You're not in competition with each other," he would say. "You're a team. The only competition is with yourself, to be better today than you were yesterday." After their father died, the family had leaned on each other even more. Their mother became their rock, keeping everyone together despite the grief. Michael had taken it especially hard, eventually leaving basketball for a time. James's phone rang, interrupting his memories. It was his sister, Roslyn. "Hey, sis," he answered, moving to the back room for privacy. "James, I just heard about the wedding from Mama." "Why didn't you tell me?" Roslyn asked, her voice full of concern. James winced. He had hoped to avoid these conversations. "It's not a big deal, Roz. We're going to do something small later." "But you two had everything planned. What happened?" James gave her the short version, downplaying the financial issues. Roslyn asked questions about the venue, the date, all the details they'd had to cancel. "Why all the questions?" James finally asked, suspicion creeping into his voice. "Just trying to understand the situation," Roslyn said smoothly. "Maybe I can help." "We don't need help," James said firmly. "And please don't go to Mike about this." "Why would you say that?" Roslyn asked too quickly. "Because I know how you think. This isn't his problem to fix." After finishing the call with his sister, James returned to the front of the store. A group of teenagers was examining the display of Michael Jordan shoes, pointing and taking pictures. "That's his brother right there," one of them whispered not so quietly, nodding toward James. James just smiled politely, used to this after all these years. He didn't mind being known as Michael Jordan's brother. He was proud of that connection. What bothered him was the assumption that came with it, that he must be rich too, that everything must be easy for him. The reality was much different. James had built his life on his own terms, brick by brick. His store, his relationship with Tina, their small but comfortable house. He had never asked Michael for money or favors, even when times were tough. He wasn't about to start now, no matter how much it hurt to see the disappointment in Tina's eyes when she thought he wasn't looking. As the day went on, James helped customers, checked inventory, and tried not to think about wedding plans that would never happen. He didn't know that 500 miles away in Florida, his famous brother was already setting wheels in motion, determined to make those plans a reality. The Florida sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks as Michael Jordan sat on his back porch, staring out at his golf course. A half-empty glass of his favorite tequila sat on the table beside him. He'd been sitting there for almost an hour, thinking. His phone showed a flight confirmation for Charlotte tomorrow morning. His bag was already packed. But the real challenge wasn't getting to Charlotte. It was figuring out exactly how to help his brother without hurting his pride. Michael took a sip of tequila and leaned back in his chair. The sprinklers had just come on, misting the perfectly maintained grass of the golf course. He'd named it the Grove 23, after his famous jersey number. Everything he owned seemed to have his name or number on it. Shoes, restaurants, even this golf course. Fame had been good to Michael Jordan. Very good. His basketball career had made him rich, but his business decisions afterward had made him a billionaire. The Jordan brand alone generated billions in sales every year. He could buy almost anything he wanted, but he couldn't buy his brother's pride. That was something money couldn't touch. Michael pulled out his phone and looked at the notes his assistant Marcus had sent. There were 3 wedding venues in Charlotte that had cancellations in the next month. One of them was Moorhead Manor, a historic home with beautiful gardens, exactly the kind of place James and Tina would love. His sister Roslyn had texted earlier, with more details she'd gotten from her call with James. The original wedding date had been June 15th, just 6 weeks away. About 80 guests were expected. They had chosen blue and silver for their colors. Most of the deposits are gone, Roslyn had written. They lost almost everything when they canceled. James is taking it hard, even though he tries not to show it. Michael rubbed his temples. If he simply offered to pay for everything, James would refuse. He had to be smarter than that, more creative. Like setting up a play on the basketball court, he needed to think several moves ahead. The sound of footsteps made Michael look up. His wife was walking toward him, carrying a light jacket. "It's getting cooler," she said, draping the jacket over his shoulders before sitting in the chair next to him. "Still thinking about James?" Michael nodded. "I need to help him, but I can't let him know I'm helping." "Why not just tell him the truth? That you want to do this because he's your brother, and you love him?" Michael smiled sadly. "Because I know James. He's been living in my shadow his whole life. He needs to feel like he can handle his own problems. So what are you going to do?" "I'm not sure yet, but I know I need to be careful. This isn't about money, it's about respect." His wife patted his hand. "You'll figure it out. You always do." After she went back inside, Michael pulled up some old family photos on his phone. There was one from Christmas 1982, before he was famous. The whole family was crowded around the tree in their Wilmington home, laughing and opening presents. Michael zoomed in on James's face. He was just a kid then, looking at his older brother with pure admiration. No complications, no shadow of fame between them. Just brothers. Another photo showed James at Michael's first NBA championship celebration in 1991. James had flown to Chicago for every home playoff game that year, cheering louder than anyone. When the Bulls won the championship, James had been right there on the court, hugging Michael with tears in his eyes. "You did it, Mike! You did it!" he had shouted over the noise of the crowd. More memories flooded back. James visiting him during his baseball career, never once questioning the decision that so many others criticized. James sitting quietly with him after their father died, sometimes not speaking for hours, just being present. James defending him to reporters who asked nosy questions about his gambling or his competitiveness. James had always been there, steady and supportive, never asking for anything in return. Michael looked up at the stars now appearing in the darkening sky. "I owe him this," he whispered to himself. The decision was made. He would find a way to give James and Tina their wedding without making James feel like he needed charity. It would take planning, secrecy, and probably a few well-placed lies. But Michael Jordan had never backed down from a challenge. He picked up his phone and called Charles Oakley again. "Oak, did you get the information I asked for?" "Yeah, Mike. I made some calls about that venue you mentioned, Moorhead Manor. Found out something interesting. They've got a cancellation for June 15th, same date your brother originally booked. The manager there is a huge basketball fan too." Michael smiled. This was the first piece falling into place. "Perfect. I'm flying in tomorrow. Can you pick me up at the airport? We've got work to do." As he hung up the phone, Michael felt that familiar fire inside, the same determination that had pushed him to hit the game-winning shot in the 1998 NBA Finals, the same will to win that had defined his career. Some people might think it was strange that Michael Jordan, one of the most famous and successful athletes of all time, was working this hard just to help his brother have a wedding. Those people had never met the Jordan family. Michael's private jet touched down at Charlotte Douglas International Airport just after 9 in the morning. Charles Oakley was waiting in a black SUV with tinted windows on the tarmac. The two old friends embraced before climbing into the vehicle. "Thanks for coming on such short notice, Oak," Michael said as they pulled away from the airport. "For you and your family?" "Any time," Oakley replied. At 6'9", the former NBA power forward barely fit behind the wheel. He had been Michael's teammate on the Chicago Bulls in the 1980s and remained one of his closest friends. "So, what's the plan exactly?" "First, we need to visit this Moorhead Manor place without anyone recognizing me," Michael said. He pulled a baseball cap low over his eyes and slipped on a pair of sunglasses. Even at nearly 60 years old, Michael Jordan couldn't go anywhere without being spotted. His face was too famous, his presence too magnetic. "You really think a hat and sunglasses are gonna do it?" Oakley laughed. "This is Charlotte, man. Your face is on billboards all over town. That's why I brought you. You're my distraction." Michael grinned. 20 minutes later, they pulled up to Moorhead Manor, a beautiful historic home with white columns and sprawling gardens. Michael stayed in the car while Oakley went inside to speak with the manager. Through the windows, Michael could see the gardens where James and Tina had planned to say their vows. It was perfect, elegant, but not flashy, just the kind of place his brother would choose. Oakley returned with a thin man in a suit who kept glancing nervously at the SUV. "Mr. Norton wants to speak with you directly," Oakley said, opening the door. "He's the manager." The man peered into the car, his eyes widening when he recognized Michael. "Mr. Jordan, this is such an honor," he stammered. "Please, come inside where we can talk privately." Inside his office, Norton couldn't stop staring at Michael. "I never thought I'd have the actual Michael Jordan in my office. I was at your last game with the Hornets, you know, when you were an owner." "That's nice," Michael said politely. "But I'm here about something else. I understand you had a cancellation for June 15th. "Yes, just yesterday. A shame, really. It's our busiest season, but so late in the game it will be hard to rebook." Michael leaned forward. "I'd like to book that date." Norton blinked in surprise. "For yourself, Mr. Jordan?" "No, for my brother James. He and his fiancée, Tina Moore, had actually booked this place originally, but had to cancel. I'd like to reinstate their wedding, but with one condition." Michael explained his unusual request. The venue would contact James, claiming there had been an accounting error. His deposit hadn't been processed correctly and was still available. Furthermore, a fortuitous cancellation had reopened his original date. The venue would offer to reinstate his original booking at a special rate due to the confusion. "But there's no special rate. I'll pay the full amount, plus extra for your discretion," Michael said, sliding a check across the desk. "My brother can't know I'm involved." Norton stared at the check, then at Michael. "May I ask why the secrecy?" Michael hesitated, then decided honesty was best. "My brother has always made his own way. He doesn't want to be in my shadow. If he knew I was paying, he'd refuse." Norton nodded slowly. "I understand family pride, Mr. Jordan. My own brother and I are the same way." He picked up the check. "Consider it done. I'll call Mr. Jordan, your brother, this afternoon with the good news about our accounting error. One more thing, Michael added. I need the names of the other vendors they had booked. Caterer, florist, photographer, everything. Back in the SUV, Michael checked off the first item on his list. The venue's handled. Now we need to track down all the other wedding services without James finding out. How are you going to do that? Oakley asked as they drove through Charlotte. I've got people working on it, Michael replied, checking his phone. His assistant, Marcus, had texted a list of local wedding vendors that Rosalind had extracted from her conversation with James. We need to visit each one and make the same deal. Their next stop was a small catering company called Charlotte's Finest. The owner, a middle-aged woman named Karen, almost dropped her tray of samples when Michael walked in. "Oh my goodness," she gasped. "You're him." Michael gave her his famous smile. "Yes, ma'am, and I need your help with something important." Karen's catering company had been one of the services James and Tina had to cancel. Like the venue, they had lost their deposit. Michael made the same proposal. Karen would call, James claiming a scheduling mix-up had occurred and his original date was available again. She would offer a discount that would make the price manageable for James, while Michael would quietly pay the difference and then some. "It would mean so much to my brother and his fiancée," Michael explained. "They've been planning this for years." Karen wiped away a tear. "My husband and I have been Bulls fans since the 90s. Our son is named Jordan, after you. Of course I'll help." Throughout the day, Michael and Oakley visited the florist, the photographer, the DJ, and the baker who had been lined up for the original wedding. At each stop, Michael made the same deal, swearing everyone to secrecy. Each vendor would contact James with a story about why they could suddenly accommodate his wedding at a reduced rate. All these coincidences might make him suspicious, Oakley pointed out, as they drove to their last stop. "Maybe," Michael admitted, "but James wants this wedding badly enough that he might just accept a stroke of good luck without questioning it too much." Their final visit was to a local men's formal wear shop where James had ordered tuxedos. The owner was more difficult to convince. "I don't know, Mr. Jordan," he said skeptically. Telling him we suddenly found his deposit that was supposedly non-refundable? That's a pretty big stretch, Michael thought for a moment. What if you tell him a customer canceled a large order and you're overstocked with his size? You can offer him a store credit for the lost deposit. The owner nodded slowly. That could work. It happens sometimes. By late afternoon, Michael and Oakley had visited every vendor on the list. Each had agreed to contact James with their own good news story. The plan was coming together, but the timing would be crucial. "We need the calls spaced out," Michael told his assistant Marcus over the phone. "If everyone calls him on the same day with good news, he'll definitely suspect something." Back in the SUV, Michael finally relaxed. Phase 1 of his plan was complete. Now came the hardest part, staying in the shadows while making sure everything went perfectly. "You think this will actually work?" Oakley asked, as they headed to his home, where Michael would stay to avoid being spotted at a hotel. Michael looked out the window at the Charlotte skyline. "It has to work, Oak. This isn't just about a wedding. It's about showing my brother that sometimes good things happen to good people." Oakley nodded. "You're a good brother, Mike." "I'm trying to be," Michael replied softly. "James deserves this. Happiness. And if I have to pull a few strings behind the scenes to make it happen, that's what I'll do." As the SUV turned onto a quiet suburban street, Michael's phone buzzed with a text from Rosalind. "James just called me. Moorhead Manor contacted him about an accounting error. He's suspicious, but excited. Plan is in motion." Michael smiled. The game was on. The next morning, Michael sat at Charles Oakley's kitchen table, drinking coffee and making calls. His list of allies was growing. Oak had already reached out to several former basketball players who lived in the Charlotte area, or had connections there. Del Curry's in, Oakley reported, joining Michael at the table. He owns part of that restaurant downtown and says he'll handle the rehearsal dinner. Told him to make it seem like a last-minute cancellation opened up their private room. Michael nodded approvingly. Del Curry had played for the Charlotte Hornets when Michael was the team owner. His son Steven had gone on to become one of the greatest shooters in NBA history. "What about transportation?" Michael asked. James mentioned they had to cancel the limo service too. "Already on it," Oakley replied. "My cousin runs Carolina Elite Limos. He's calling James today about a community goodwill program they're launching. First 5 weddings of the summer. Get free transportation," Michael laughed. "Think he'll buy that?" "Would you?" Oakley asked. "Probably not," Michael admitted. "But I'd want to, especially if everything else was falling into place." Michael's phone rang. The screen showed Scottie Pippen's name, his former teammate, and one of the greatest forwards to ever play the game. "Pip, thanks for calling back," Michael answered. "Oak told me what you're doing for your brother," Pippen said. "Count me in. I'm flying to Charlotte tomorrow." "You don't have to come all the way here," Michael protested. "Too late. Already booked the flight," Pippen replied. "Besides, it'll make sense. I've got that youth basketball camp next week in Raleigh. I'll just say I came early to visit friends." Michael felt a surge of gratitude. Throughout his career, he had been known as an intense competitor, sometimes hard on teammates and rivals alike. But those who knew him best understood his loyalty ran deep. "What do you need me to do?" Pippen asked. "We need more people we can trust," Michael explained. "James is smart. If things fall into place too easily, he'll get suspicious." They discussed the plan for several minutes. Pippen would serve as another set of eyes and ears around Charlotte, helping coordinate the various vendors without being seen with Michael. As another famous former Bull, Pippen could move freely around town, making arrangements without raising suspicions. "How about a wedding gift fund?" Pippen suggested. "Something where friends and family can contribute without him knowing how much. Came from you." "That's perfect," Michael said. "Set it up with a local bank. Make it anonymous. Donors' names hidden from the recipients." Next, Michael called his old Chicago Bulls coach, Phil Jackson. Though not able to travel to Charlotte due to prior commitments, Jackson offered wisdom in his usual philosophical manner. "The greatest gift may be allowing your brother to believe he accomplished this himself," Jackson said. "Let him have the victory. Stay in the shadows." "That's the plan, Phil," Michael replied. "And one more thing," Jackson added. "Don't forget to enjoy the process. This isn't just about the wedding day. It's about the journey to get there." After hanging up, Michael looked at the growing list of people helping with his secret mission. Former teammates, coaches, business associates, a roster of legendary names was forming to help one ordinary couple have their special day. A text came in from Isaiah Thomas, Michael's fierce rival during their playing days. Their relationship had been famously contentious, especially during the heated Chicago-Detroit playoff battles of the late 1980s. "Heard what you're doing for your brother," the message read. "Respect. My foundation works with a florist in Charlotte. They'll handle the flowers, cost covered. No questions asked." Michael stared at the phone in surprise. Even Isaiah was offering help. Basketball rivalries might last forever, but family transcended all of that. By noon, Michael had fielded calls from a dozen more people wanting to help. Some were famous athletes. Others were business connections from his Jordan brand empire. All wanted to be part of the mission. "This is getting bigger than I expected," Michael told Oakley. "That's your effect on people," Oakley replied. When Michael Jordan calls, people listen. Michael's phone buzzed with a message from Roslyn. James just got a call from the photographer. He's starting to think it's his lucky day. Still doesn't suspect anything. We need to be careful, Michael said, more to himself than to Oakley. Too much good luck might seem suspicious. Or, Oakley countered, it might seem like the universe is finally giving your brother a break. Later that afternoon, Michael received another message from his sister. Tina is crying happy tears. The cake bakery called and said they had a cancellation and can do their wedding after all. Michael felt a lump in his throat. This wasn't about basketball or business deals. This wasn't about winning championships or building a billion-dollar brand. This was about family, about making his little brother happy. As the day ended, Michael looked at the list of tasks completed and those still to do. The venue, catering, photography, transportation, flowers, and cake were all arranged. Still needed were the music, decorations, and 100 other details that would make the wedding perfect. The team was assembled. The plan was in motion. And Michael Jordan, the man who had led the Chicago Bulls to 6 NBA championships, was facing what might be his most important challenge yet, giving his brother the perfect wedding without taking away his pride. Early, the next morning, Michael moved his operation to a private office at the Jordan brand headquarters in Charlotte. Few people knew he was in town, and he wanted to keep it that way. The spacious corner office overlooked the city, with Michael's familiar Jumpman logo visible on the building across the street. James called me last night, Oakley reported as he entered with coffee. He's excited but confused. Says it's like the whole world suddenly wants his wedding to happen. Michael smiled. Good, as long as he doesn't suspect me. Oh, he suspects, Oakley chuckled. But he can't prove anything. Michael's assistant Marcus had set up a large whiteboard with a timeline of the wedding preparations. Each task had a person assigned to it, with deadlines and notes. It looked like the planning board for a major business launch or a championship basketball season. Scotty lands at noon, Marcus said, checking his tablet. I've arranged for a car to bring him directly here. Michael nodded. What about the DJ? James mentioned they had to cancel the music too. Already handled, said a voice from the doorway. Michael turned to see Ahmad Rashad, his longtime friend and former NBC sports commentator. They embraced warmly. Ahmad, I didn't know you were coming to Charlotte. When Scotty called, I couldn't say no, Ahmad replied. Besides, I have connections with the music industry. The DJ they wanted was already booked for another event on June 15th, but I found someone even better. DJ Jazzy Jeff is in town that weekend for a club appearance. He's agreed to stop by and play the reception for an hour. Michael's eyebrows shot up. Seriously? James would love that. It's all arranged. We're telling James that the club is sponsoring a contest, and he and Tina have been randomly selected as winners. 1 hour of DJ Jazzy Jeff at their wedding reception. Michael laughed. That's so ridiculous it might actually work. Throughout the morning, Michael fielded calls from various vendors and helpers. Nike executives had agreed to cover several expenses as a community goodwill initiative. A local printing company offered to redo the invitations at no cost, claiming they were testing new paper stock. 2 Charlotte restaurants had volunteered to cater different parts of the wedding weekend. This is getting complicated, Michael said, looking at the growing web of favors and arrangements on the whiteboard. We need to make sure stories don't contradict each other. Marcus nodded, making notes. I'm keeping track of what each vendor is telling James and Tina. So far, no contradictions. By the time Scottie Pippen arrived, the office resembled a command center. Maps of Charlotte marked important locations. Lists of guests, vendors, and helpers covered another wall. Michael was on the phone, speaking with a jeweler about wedding bands. "Yes, I understand they already purchased rings," Michael was saying, "but could you contact them about a special promotion? Buy one, get one free? Or a store credit for future purchases?" He paused, listening. "Perfect. Thank you." He hung up and greeted Pippin with their old handshake from Bull's days. "This is quite an operation you've got here," Pippin said, looking around the room. "You know me, Pip. I don't do anything halfway." Pippin picked up a folder labeled Backup Plans and flipped through it. "You've thought of everything." "Not everything," Michael admitted. "What happens when James figures out I did all this? He's going to be upset." "Is he, though?" Pippin challenged. "Think about it. Deep down, he probably wants to believe good things can happen to him, that the universe isn't against him." "The universe isn't helping him," Michael pointed out. "I am. Maybe you're the universe's way of helping," Pippin suggested with a smile. Michael's phone buzzed with a message from Roslyn. "James just called. Tina's dress shop called. They found her exact dress on sale. He's starting to believe in miracles." Michael showed the message to Pippin and Oakley, who both laughed. "The dress was the trickiest part," Michael explained. "We couldn't find out exactly which one Tina wanted without raising suspicions. Roslyn had to call every bridal shop in Charlotte, pretending to be Tina's cousin looking for ideas for her own wedding. Finally, found the shop where Tina had put a dress on hold before they canceled. And now the shop mysteriously found the same dress on sale?" Oakley grinned. 50% off, Michael confirmed. "A sample sale, they called it." The phone on the desk rang, a secure line that only a few people had the number for. Michael answered and was surprised to hear his mother's voice. "Michael Jeffrey Jordan, what are you up to?" Dolores Jordan asked directly. Michael glanced at Pippin and Oakley and mouthed, "Mom," with a slightly worried expression. "What do you mean?" he asked innocently. "Don't play games with me," his mother replied. "James called me this morning, all excited about his wedding being back on. Says it's a miracle. Now, I've lived long enough to know there aren't that many miracles involving wedding venues and catering companies." Michael sighed. There was no point lying to his mother. He never could. "I'm helping him, Mama. But he can't know it's me." "Why not?" "Because he's proud. Like Dad was. Like you taught us to be." There was a pause on the line. Then Dolores spoke, more softly. "Your father would be very proud of you right now, Michael. Just be careful with your brother's feelings. Pride is a complicated thing." "I know, Mama. That's why I'm being so careful." After hanging up, Michael stared out the window at the Charlotte skyline. He was walking a fine line between helping his brother and respecting his independence. If James discovered too soon that Michael was behind everything, he might cancel the wedding again out of pride. The office door opened, and a young woman from the marketing department poked her head in. "Mr. Jordan, there's a call from James Jordan on line 2. The room went silent. Michael looked at Pippin and Oakley, both of whom appeared concerned. "Did he ask for me specifically?" Michael questioned. "No, sir. He called the main office line, asking about promotional items for his store. The receptionist recognized the name and put him through to marketing." "But since you're here..." Michael shook his head. "Transfer the call to Greg in merchandise. Don't mention I'm in the building." After the woman left, Oakley whistled low. "That was close." "Too close," Michael agreed. "I need to be more careful. If James finds out I'm in Charlotte, he'll know. Something's up." The rest of the day was spent coordinating various aspects of the wedding rescue mission. Michael worked the phones from his office, while Scotty and Oak ventured out into Charlotte to meet with vendors in person. By evening, almost everything was arranged. The wedding was back on track, with most of the original plans restored and several upgrades added. Through a complex web of favors, discounts, and mysterious lucky breaks, James and Tina would get the wedding they had dreamed of. Michael sat alone in the office after everyone else had left, looking at a photo of James on his phone. His younger brother was smiling in the picture, arm around Tina at a family barbecue last summer. "I hope I'm doing the right thing," Michael whispered to the empty room. His phone buzzed with a final message for the day from Roslyn. "James just told me he thinks someone up there is looking out for him and Tina. If only he knew it was his big brother down here pulling the strings." Michael smiled. For now, at least, the plan was working. His invisible hand was guiding his brother's wedding back on track, and James was none the wiser. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for tonight, Michael Jordan, the master of the fadeaway jumper, was successfully fading into the background, exactly where he needed to be. The next morning, James Jordan unlocked his store with a lighter step than he'd had in weeks. The string of fortunate events over the past few days had lifted a weight from his shoulders. The wedding was back on, and somehow, miraculously, it was going to cost less than they had originally planned. The bell above the door jingled as his first customer of the day entered, a teenage boy and his father looking for basketball shoes. "We have the new Air Jordans in stock," James said with a smile. "Just got them yesterday." "Cool," the boy exclaimed. "Did you ever meet Michael Jordan? I mean, since you have the same last name and all?" James smiled. He got this question at least once a day. "He's my brother, actually." The father looked skeptical. "For real? You're Michael Jordan's brother?" James nodded and pointed to a framed photo behind the counter, showing him and Michael at a family gathering. "Whoa!" the boy gasped. "That's so awesome! What's he like?" "He's just my brother," James said simply. "Competitive, stubborn, generous when you least expect it." After the customers left with their purchase, James checked his phone. 3 missed calls, all from vendors related to the wedding. He called the first one back, a local event planner. "Mr. Jordan, this is Patricia from Elegant Events. I'm calling because we've had a last-minute opening in our schedule for June 15th. I understand that was your original wedding date. We normally book 6 months in advance, but another client just postponed their event." James frowned. This was getting weird. "What exactly does your company do?" "We handle all the small details, setting up decorations, coordinating vendors, on the day, making sure everything runs smoothly. Our services would normally cost $3,000, but because of the late notice, we're offering a special rate of just $800, another lucky break." James thanked the woman and said he'd discuss it with his fiancée. The second call was from a local hotel. "We understand your wedding guests might need accommodations for June 15th. We've had a large group cancellation and can offer a block of rooms at half our normal rate." The third call was even more surprising, a wedding videographer offering a 2-camera package for a fraction of the usual price, claiming they were building their portfolio and needed summer weddings. James hung up the phone and stared at it suspiciously. One lucky coincidence was believable. 2 might be good fortune. But this many? Something didn't add up. His phone buzzed with a text from Tina. "You won't believe this. The bridal shop called. They found my exact dress at another location. And it's 50% off." James felt a mixture of emotions. Joy that their wedding plans were coming together again. Relief that it would cost less than they had feared. But also a growing suspicion that these coincidences weren't coincidences at all. During his lunch break, James closed the shop and drove to Moorhead Manor, the wedding venue that had mysteriously found an error in their accounting. He wanted to see the place again and, just maybe, find some answers. The manager, Mr. Norton, greeted him with a smile that seemed a little too eager. "Mr. Jordan, what a pleasant surprise. Are you here to discuss the details of your June 15th ceremony?" "Actually," James said carefully, "I'm curious about something. How exactly did you discover this accounting error with my deposit?" Norton's smile faltered slightly. "Oh, well, you know, our quarterly audit revealed several inconsistencies. Yours wasn't the only account affected. And the cancellation that reopened my date, that was just lucky timing?" "Extremely fortunate, yes," Norton nodded vigorously. "The bride developed severe allergies to our garden flowers, had to cancel entirely." James looked around the elegant venue, trying to spot anything out of place, any clue to what was really happening. The explanation sounded reasonable, but something felt off. "Is there anything else I can help you with today?" Norton asked, clearly anxious to end the conversation. "No, that's all," James replied. "Thank you for your time." As he walked back to his car, James stopped suddenly. Near the entrance, a black SUV with tinted windows was parked. It looked exactly like the kind of vehicle his brother Michael usually rode in when visiting Charlotte. James walked closer, trying to see inside, but the windows were too dark. Back at his store, James called Tina. "Do you think it's strange?" he asked after telling her about all the calls. "All these vendors suddenly offering us discounts and finding openings on the exact date we wanted?" "It's incredible luck," Tina agreed. "But why question it? We're getting our wedding back, James. Isn't that what matters?" "Of course," he said. "It's just, I can't help thinking someone's behind all this." There was a pause before Tina spoke again. "You think it's Michael, don't you?" James sighed. "Who else could pull something like this off? These businesses wouldn't all suddenly decide to give us deals out of nowhere." "Would it be so terrible if he wanted to help us?" Tina asked gently. "It's not that," James explained. "It's the way he's doing it. The secrecy, the manipulation. Like I couldn't handle knowing the truth." "Or," Tina suggested, "maybe he knows you well enough to understand you wouldn't accept his help directly. He's respecting your pride, James." James hadn't thought of it that way. Was it possible Michael was being secretive not to trick him, but to protect his dignity? That evening at home, James sat on his back porch, gazing at the stars and thinking about his brother. They had always had a complicated relationship. Growing up in the shadow of the world's greatest basketball player wasn't easy. Everyone always asked about Michael, expected James to be like Michael, but Michael had never treated him as less than, never flaunted his success or made James feel small. In fact, Michael had always been supportive, always been there when it truly mattered. James pulled out his phone and scrolled to Michael's number. His thumb hovered over the call button. Should he confront his brother? Ask him directly if he was behind all these lucky breaks? Before he could decide, his phone rang. It was the DJ they had originally booked, calling with news that seemed too good to be true. "Mr. Jordan, you're not going to believe this, but we've been selected to participate in a promotional event with DJ Jazzy Jeff. He'll perform at one wedding reception in June, and your date is perfect. Would you be interested?" James couldn't help but laugh. This was getting ridiculous. But as he listened to the excited DJ explain the contest, he made a decision. Maybe, just maybe, he would accept these gifts without question. If Michael was behind it all, there would be time enough to thank him or confront him later. For now, their wedding was back on, and somehow, impossibly, it was going to be even better than they had dreamed. The next morning, James woke up early. He made coffee and sat at the kitchen table. making a list of all the coincidences that had happened in the past few days. The venue, the caterer, the photographer, the florist, the DJ, the dress, the hotel rooms, the videographer, the tuxedos, the transportation. Every single aspect of their wedding had mysteriously fallen back into place, often at reduced prices. The logical part of James's brain knew this couldn't be random chance. Someone had to be pulling strings. His phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Michael's name flashed on the screen. James took a deep breath before answering. "Hey, Mike." "James, how's it going, little brother?" Michael's voice sounded casual, perhaps a little too casual. "Things are good," James replied carefully. "Really good, actually." "Oh yeah. What's going on?" James hesitated. If Michael was behind everything, he was playing dumb remarkably well. And if he wasn't, James would sound crazy explaining his suspicions. "The wedding's back on," James said finally. "What? That's great news!" Michael exclaimed, with what sounded like genuine surprise. "What happened?" James gave his brother a brief summary of the strange events of the past few days. The accounting error at the venue, the dress suddenly on sale, the DJ contest, all of it. "That's incredible," Michael said when James finished. "Talk about a lucky break." "Yeah," James agreed, listening carefully for any hint that Michael knew more than he was letting on. "Lucky. So when is it happening?" Michael asked. "June 15th. "The original date." "Perfect. I'll be there, of course. Wouldn't miss it." They talked for a few more minutes about family matters and their mother's health before hanging up. James sat staring at his phone, more confused than ever. Either Michael was telling the truth and wasn't involved, or he was a much better actor than James had given him credit for. Later that morning, James and Tina met with Mr. Norton at Moorhead Manor to go over the details of their reinstated wedding plans. "Everything is proceeding smoothly," Norton assured them, showing them around the gardens where their ceremony would take place. "The weather in June is typically beautiful, and these roses will be in full bloom." Tina squeezed James's hand, her eyes shining with happiness. "I can't believe this is happening again. It feels like a dream." Norton led them to the ballroom where their reception would be held. "We can accommodate up to 100 guests here. The dance floor is over there, and the DJ will set up in that corner." As Norton continued explaining the layout, James noticed something on a desk in the corner of the room, a legal pad with notes scribbled on it. One line caught his eye. "MJ approved final payment." James's heart skipped a beat. MJ, Michael Jordan. It had to be. "Excuse me," he said, interrupting Norton mid-sentence. "Whose notes are those on the desk?" Norton turned, saw what James was looking at, and quickly moved to block his view. "Oh, those are just some notes for another event. Nothing to do with your wedding." But James had seen enough. His suspicions were confirmed. Michael was behind all of this. On the drive home, James was unusually quiet. Tina noticed and placed her hand on his knee. "What's wrong? You should be happy. Everything's coming together perfectly." "Too perfectly," James muttered. "I saw some notes at the venue. They mentioned MJ approving a payment." Tina's eyes widened. "Michael? You think he's paying for our wedding?" "Not just paying. Orchestrating everything. All these lucky breaks. It's all him, pulling strings behind the scenes." Tina was quiet for a moment before responding. "If that's true, is it really so terrible?" James gripped the steering wheel tighter. "It's not about the money, Tina. It's about him thinking I need to be rescued. Like I can't take care of my own family, my own wedding." "Or maybe," Tina suggested gently, It's about him loving you and wanting to help without hurting your pride. He knows you'd never accept a check from him. James considered this. Would he have accepted direct financial help from Michael? Probably not. His pride wouldn't have allowed it. I just wish he'd been honest with me, James said finally. Are you going to confront him? Tina asked. James thought for a moment, then shook his head. Not yet. Let's see how this plays out. That evening, James called his sister Roslyn. If anyone knew what Michael was up to, it would be her. Hey, Roz, he said when she answered. Can I ask you something? Of course, little brother. What's up? Is Michael paying for my wedding? There was a pause on the line. Too long of a pause? What makes you think that? Roslyn asked carefully. Come on, Roz. All these vendors suddenly calling with special deals? The venue finding an accounting error? It's too much to be coincidence. Roslyn sighed. James, does it really matter where the help is coming from? You and Tina deserve this wedding. Just accept the blessing. It wasn't a denial, which told James everything he needed to know. So he is behind it, James pressed. Is he in Charlotte right now? I think you should talk to Michael about this, Roslyn said, avoiding the question. But maybe not until after. The wedding? Let yourself enjoy this, James. That's all any of us want for you. After hanging up, James called Michael again, but the call went to voicemail. He didn't leave a message. Later that night, he told Tina about his conversation with Roslyn. What are you going to do? She asked, curling up next to him on the couch. James was quiet for a long time before answering. Nothing. At least, not yet. Nothing? Tina looked surprised. If Michael wants to help from the shadows, let him. We'll have our wedding. It will be beautiful. Our families will be there. And afterward, I'll thank him properly. Tina smiled and kissed his cheek. I think that's the right decision. And for what it's worth, I think it's incredibly sweet what he's doing. James nodded slowly. It is sweet. Annoying and controlling, but sweet. The next day, James threw himself into wedding preparations with new energy. He called guests who had been told about the cancellation to give them the good news. He met with the reinstated caterer to finalize the menu. He contacted the minister to confirm he was still available. With each call and each meeting, James looked for signs of his brother's involvement. Sometimes he found them. A vendor who seemed too eager to please. A service that was surprisingly affordable. Other times, everything seemed normal. Through it all, James kept his suspicions to himself. If Michael wanted to play this game, James would let him win. For now. The wedding would happen, and it would be perfect. And afterward, the brothers would have a conversation. A long overdue conversation about family, pride, and the invisible lines that connected them all. As the wedding date grew closer, James found himself watching for signs of Michael's involvement in every detail. With each passing day, the evidence mounted. When the wedding invitations arrived, they were printed on expensive paper that James knew he hadn't ordered. When the limousine company called to confirm the pickup time, the representative mentioned something about a community goodwill program that sounded rehearsed. When the baker delivered a sample of their wedding cake, a 3-tier masterpiece far more elaborate than what they had originally planned, James just smiled and thanked her, noticing how she avoided discussing the price. 2 weeks before the wedding, James closed his store early and drove to his mother's house in Wilmington. If anyone would give him straight answers, it would be her. Dolores Jordan welcomed her youngest son with a warm hug. At 79, she was still strong and sharp-minded, the family's cornerstone since James Sr.'s death. "This is a nice surprise," she said, leading him into her kitchen. "Are you hungry? I can make you something." "I'm fine, Mama," James said, sitting at the familiar kitchen table where they had shared countless family meals. "I just wanted to talk to you about something." Dolores studied her son's face carefully. "The wedding?" James nodded. "Have you talked to Michael recently?" His mother busied herself making tea. "He calls me every Sunday, you know that." "Mama," James said gently, "I know what's happening. Michael is behind all these lucky breaks with the wedding vendors." Dolores brought 2 cups of tea to the table and sat across from him. "And if he is? Would that be so terrible? I just want to know why he wouldn't tell me directly. Why all the secrecy?" His mother reached across the table and took his hand. "Your brother knows you well, James. He knows your pride. He was trying to help without making you feel like you needed help." "So you knew about this?" James asked. Dolores nodded. "Michael told me after I questioned him about all these coincidences. He swore me to secrecy. Who else knows? Roslyn, Charles Oakley, some others," she admitted. "A lot of people care about you and Tina, James." James stared into his tea. "I'm not sure how to feel about all this." "Feel grateful," his mother suggested. "And maybe a little loved." James stayed for dinner, reminiscing with his mother about his father, about growing up in Wilmington, about family holidays and basketball games in the backyard. As he prepared to leave, Dolores walked him to his car. "James," she said, her voice serious, "let your brother do this for you. He needs it as much as you do." "What do you mean?" "Michael has all the money in the world, but sometimes I think he feels disconnected. This is his way of showing love, by solving problems. It's the only way he knows how." James thought about this during the drive back to Charlotte. Was his mother right? Was Michael's secretive help more about Michael's need to give than James's need to receive? The next morning at his store, James was surprised when a delivery man brought in a large package. Inside was a custom display case for sports memorabilia, something James had mentioned wanting months ago during a family dinner. The invoice listed the sender simply as Jordan Enterprises. Later that day, the phone rang again. This time, it was a travel agent. "Mr. Jordan, I'm calling about your honeymoon package to Barbados. Everything is confirmed for your stay at Sandy Lane Resort. The upgrade to the Ocean View Suite has been processed at no additional charge." James frowned. "I'm sorry. There must be some mistake. We haven't booked a honeymoon yet." The agent sounded confused. "I have the reservation right here. 7 nights, all-inclusive, starting June 16th. It shows as fully paid." "Who made this reservation?" James asked. "I'm not authorized to say, but it was arranged through our corporate client program," the agent explained carefully. "The client requested that we confirm the details with you." After hanging up, James sat at his desk, overwhelmed. A honeymoon in Barbados? They had talked about it, dreamed about it, but never actually planned it due to the cost. Sandy Lane was one of the most exclusive resorts in the Caribbean. This was going too far. A venue was one thing, but a luxury honeymoon? How was he supposed to explain this to Tina without admitting that his famous brother was secretly funding their entire wedding and honeymoon? James picked up his phone to call Michael, then put it down again. Confronting his brother now might disrupt everything. The wedding was less than 2 weeks away. Guests were making travel arrangements. Vendors were finalizing details. No, James decided. He would wait. The wedding would proceed as planned. Michael would attend as a guest, pretending to know nothing about the strange coincidences that had made it all possible. And afterward, when it was all over, the brothers would talk about family, about pride, about the thin line between helping and meddling, about what it really meant to be brothers. The evening before the wedding arrived with perfect June weather in Charlotte. The rehearsal was scheduled for 6 o'clock at Moorhead Manor, followed by dinner at Del Frisco's, one of the city's finest steakhouses. James had been told that the restaurant had a last-minute cancellation in their private dining room. Yet another lucky coincidence. James arrived early at the venue with Tina, watching as their families began to gather. His mother, Dolores, was there, elegant in a powder blue dress. His sister Roslyn arrived with her husband. His brothers Ronnie and Larry came with their wives. Friends from high school and college showed up, along with Tina's large extended family. Michael was conspicuously absent. "Has anyone heard from Mike?" James asked his mother as they waited to begin the rehearsal. Dolores checked her phone. "He texted that he's running late. His flight from Florida was delayed." James nodded, wondering if that was true or if Michael was deliberately arriving late to avoid questions. The rehearsal proceeded smoothly. They practiced the procession, the vows, the ring exchange. The wedding coordinator, another service that had mysteriously appeared at a reduced rate, directed everyone with calm efficiency. Just as they were finishing, a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the venue. The driver opened the back door, and Michael Jordan stepped out, accompanied by his wife. "Sorry I'm late," Michael called, walking toward the group with his familiar confident stride. "Air traffic." He hugged his mother, kissed Roslyn on the cheek, and shook hands with his brothers. When he got to James, he pulled him into a bear hug. "Happy for you, little brother," Michael said, and James could hear genuine emotion in his voice. "Glad you could make it," James replied, studying his brother's face for any sign of guilt or secrecy. Michael's expression revealed nothing. After a few more photos at the venue, the wedding party moved to Del Frisco's for the rehearsal dinner. The private dining room was elegantly decorated with flowers and candles. A jazz trio played softly in the corner. Champagne was already flowing when they arrived. James noticed that Michael kept his distance during the pre-dinner mingling, talking with Tina's parents, joking with old friends, never spending too much time with any one person. This was typical Michael, working the room, being charming, keeping everyone at just the right distance. When they sat down for dinner, James found himself at the head table with Tina on one side, and, by some arrangement of the place cards, Michael on the other. James couldn't help wondering if his famous brother had orchestrated even this small detail. As the appetizers were served, Michael turned to James. "Everything coming together okay for tomorrow?" "Surprisingly well," James replied, watching his brother closely. "We've had some amazing luck in the past few weeks." Michael took a sip of his wine. "Sometimes things just work out." "Do they?" James asked. "Or do they get worked out by someone behind the scenes? A flicker of something? Surprise? Concern?" crossed Michael's face before his expression returned to neutral. "What do you mean?" Before James could respond, the restaurant manager approached their table. "Mr. Jordan, the chef has prepared a special tasting menu for your party tonight. It's not on our regular menu, something he created just for this occasion." "That sounds fantastic," Michael answered smoothly. "Please thank him for us." James waited until the manager walked away before turning back to his brother. "See what I mean? Special treatment everywhere we go." Michael shrugged. "The Jordan name opens doors. Always has." "Does it open doors for me or for you?" James asked quietly. A look of understanding passed between the brothers. For a moment, James thought Michael might confess everything. Instead, his brother changed the subject. "Remember Dad's old sayings about weddings? He always claimed that rain on your wedding day meant a lucky marriage." James smiled despite himself. "Good thing the forecast for tomorrow is clear and sunny." "Dad would have loved Tina," Michael continued. "She grounds you. Reminds me of how Mom was with Dad. The mention of their father shifted something in James. The tension he'd been carrying eased slightly. Whatever game Michael was playing, whatever strings he was pulling, it came from a place of love. The same love their father had taught them all. As dinner progressed, James observed Michael interacting with the other guests. Despite his fame and wealth, Michael had always had a gift for making people feel comfortable. He remembered names, asked about children and jobs, laughed at the right moments. No one would guess that this man, worth billions, had secretly arranged and paid for much of the wedding they were celebrating. After the main course, it was time for toasts. Tina's father went first, raising his glass to welcome James to their family. Rosalind spoke next, sharing sweet memories of James as a child. Then it was Michael's turn. The room fell silent as Michael stood, glass in hand. Even those who had known him for years still felt the power of his presence. "Little brother," Michael began, his deep voice carrying through the room without effort. "I remember the day you were born. I was 11 years old, and Dad let me hold you in the hospital. You were so small, but you had these intense eyes, like you were already figuring out the world." James felt a lump forming in his throat as Michael continued. "Growing up with 4 siblings taught us all about sharing. Sharing rooms, sharing clothes, sharing attention. But the most important thing we shared was our parents' love. James Sr. and Dolores showed us that family is everything, that no matter what happens in life, family stands together." Michael turned slightly to include Tina in his toast. "Tomorrow, our family grows by one more. Tina, thank you for loving my brother exactly as he is, stubborn, proud, and loyal to his core." Laughter rippled through the room, and James felt Tina squeeze his hand under the table. "To James and Tina," Michael concluded, raising his glass higher. "May your marriage be blessed with love, health, and just the right amount of luck." Something in the way Michael emphasized the word luck made James certain his suspicions were correct. As everyone drank to the toast, the brothers' eyes met again, and this time, Michael gave the slightest nod, almost imperceptible, but unmistakable to James. After dinner, as guests began to leave, James pulled Michael aside into a quiet corner of the restaurant. "I need to ask you something," James said, keeping his voice low. "And I want an honest answer." Michael's expression became guarded. "What is it?" "The honeymoon at Sandy Lane in Barbados. Was that you?" Michael hesitated just long enough to confirm James's suspicions. "James, tomorrow is your wedding day. Let's focus on that." "So it was you," James pressed. "And everything else, too. The venue, the caterer, all of it." "Does it matter?" Michael asked. "You're getting the wedding you and Tina deserve. Isn't that what's important?" James took a deep breath. "After tomorrow, you and I are going to have a serious conversation about boundaries, about respect." Michael nodded slowly. "Fair enough. But for now, can we just celebrate? Your wedding is tomorrow, little brother. Everything else can wait." Looking at his brother, the man who had conquered the basketball world, built a business empire, and apparently orchestrated an entire wedding in secret, James felt his anger softening. Whatever Michael's methods, his intentions were good. "Okay," James agreed finally. "Tomorrow is about Tina and me. But after that, we'll talk," Michael promised, brother to brother. As they rejoined the remaining guests, James felt both tension and relief. The truth was finally coming to the surface. But first, there was a wedding to celebrate. The morning of June 15th dawned bright and clear in Charlotte, just as the weather forecast had predicted. James woke early in his best friend Marcus's guest room, where tradition dictated he spend the night before the wedding. He lay still for a moment, watching sunlight filter through the blinds, thinking about the day ahead. In a few hours, he would marry Tina, the woman who had stood by him through good times and bad. The woman who had been just as heartbroken as he was when they'd canceled the wedding, and just as thrilled when it mysteriously came back together. The woman who deserved a perfect day, regardless of how it had been arranged. His phone buzzed, with a text from Michael. "Big day, little brother. Everything will be perfect." James stared at those words. Everything will be perfect. A statement, not a wish. As if Michael had personally guaranteed it, which James now knew he essentially had. After a quick breakfast, James and his groomsmen, his brothers Larry and Ronnie, his best friend Marcus, and Tina's brother Kevin, headed to Moorhead Manor. They were directed to a suite of rooms set aside for the groom's party, complete with refreshments, comfortable seating, and a large-screen TV showing a basketball game. "This is fancy," Marcus whispered to James as they hung up their tuxedos. "Must have cost a fortune." James just nodded, choosing not to explain that his famous brother had likely covered most of the expenses. In another wing of the manor, Tina and her bridesmaids were getting ready in a similar suite. James had received several excited texts from her already, along with a photo of her mother helping with her hair. He couldn't wait to see her walk down the aisle. Around 11 o'clock, there was a knock at the door. Larry opened it to find Michael standing there, already dressed in a perfectly tailored suit. "Mind if I talk to the groom alone for a minute?" Michael asked. The others filed out, giving the brothers privacy. Michael sat across from James, studying him with the intense focus he was famous for. "You okay?" Michael asked. "I'm getting married." "Today," James replied. "I'm better than okay," Michael nodded. "I just wanted to check. After our conversation last night." "I meant what I said," James assured him. "Today is about Tina and me. Everything else can wait." "Good," Michael said, relaxing slightly. "Because I have something for you." He pulled a small box from his pocket and handed it to James. Inside was a pair of gold cufflinks, simple and elegant, engraved with the initials JSJ, James Samuel Jordan Jr. "These were Dad's," Michael explained. "Mom gave them to me after he died. I've been saving them for a special occasion." James felt his throat tighten with emotion. Their father had rarely worn such formal accessories, but he'd had a few special pieces for important events. "Mike, I can't take these," James protested. "They should be yours." "Dad would want you to have them today," Michael insisted. "He always said you were the most like him. Steady, dependable, always putting family first." James carefully took the cufflinks from the box, turning them over in his palm. "Thank you. This means a lot." Michael helped him attach the cufflinks to his dress, shirt. For a moment, they were just brothers again. No complications of fame or money between them. "Whatever happens," Michael said quietly, "whatever you might think about arrangements for today, just know that I did it because you're my brother and I love you." James looked at Michael, seeing not the global icon or the billionaire businessman, but the brother who had taught him to ride a bike, who had defended him from neighborhood bullies, who had flown home immediately when their father died. "I know," James said simply. And he did know. Whatever his frustrations with Michael's methods, the motivation behind them was pure. The brothers embraced before Michael left to join their mother and the other guests arriving for the ceremony. By 1 o'clock, the gardens at Moorhead Manor were filled with nearly 100 guests. White chairs had been arranged in neat rows. An arch covered with blue and white flowers stood at the end of a petal-strewn aisle. A string quartet played softly as people found their seats. James stood at the front with the minister, his groomsmen beside him. He glanced out at the crowd, recognizing faces from every part of his life. Childhood friends, college roommates, customers from his store, Tina's large extended family. In the front row sat his mother, Dolores, elegant in a silver dress, with Michael beside her. The music changed, signaling the start of the procession. The bridesmaids walked down the aisle one by one, each carrying a small bouquet of blue and white flowers. Then the music swelled, and everyone stood. Tina appeared at the end of the aisle on her father's arm. Her dress was simple but stunning, an ivory gown that seemed to float around her as she walked. Her smile, visible even through her veil, was radiant. James felt his eyes filling with tears. After everything, the canceled plans, the financial worries, the mysterious reinstatements, the suspicions about Michael's involvement, none of it mattered now. Tina was walking toward him, about to become his wife. This was the moment they had dreamed of. The ceremony was brief, but meaningful. They exchanged traditional vows, promising to love and cherish each other through whatever life might bring. When James slipped the ring onto Tina's finger, he thought about the jeweler who had mysteriously offered them a buy one, get one free deal. Was that Michael's doing too? Probably. But right now, he didn't care. "I now pronounce you husband and wife," the minister said, beaming at them. "You may kiss the bride." As James kissed Tina, their guests erupted in applause and cheers. He heard his mother's distinctive voice above the others, calling out a blessing. When they turned to face their family and friends as a married couple, James caught Michael's eye. His famous brother gave him a small nod and a smile that spoke volumes. The reception was held in the Manor's grand ballroom, transformed with flowers, candles, and twinkling lights. The food was exquisite, the cake magnificent, the band perfect. Throughout the evening, James found himself looking for Michael's invisible hand in every detail. The champagne that seemed endless, the photographer who never missed a moment, the perfect playlist that kept everyone dancing. During dinner, James was surprised when several guests he hadn't expected showed up. Charles Oakley arrived with a generous gift and a bear hug. Scottie Pippen appeared with his family, claiming they were in the area for a basketball camp. Even Phil Jackson sent a video message that played on screens around the room, offering wisdom about marriage and partnership. "Is it just me?" Tina whispered to James between dances. "Or are there an unusual number of basketball legends at our wedding?" James laughed. "Michael's friends. They probably felt obligated to come." "They don't seem obligated," Tina observed, watching as Scottie Pippen chatted animatedly with her grandmother. "They seem happy to be here." The biggest surprise came midway through the reception when the band took a break, and the MC announced a special guest. DJ Jazzy Jeff appeared at the turntables, explaining about the contest James and Tina had won. For the next hour, he played hit after hit, turning the elegant reception into an unforgettable dance party. As James danced with Tina, surrounded by their loved ones, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Michael stood there, asking permission to dance with the bride. James stepped aside, watching as his brother twirled his new wife around the floor, making her laugh with something he said. Later, as the reception was winding down, James found a moment alone with his mother. They stood on the terrace, looking out over the garden where the ceremony had taken place. "Happy?" Dolores asked, squeezing his hand. "Very," James replied. "Everything was perfect. Your father would be so proud of the man you've become," she said, "and so proud of how you and Michael take care of each other, each in your own way." James thought about this as he watched guests beginning to leave, hugging Tina and congratulating them both. His way of taking care of people was direct, straightforward. Michael's way was more complicated, more dramatic perhaps, but equally well-intentioned. As the last guests departed, James found himself standing with Tina and Michael on the front steps of the manor. "Thank you for coming," James said formally, to his brother, maintaining the preteens for Tina's sake, though she clearly knew the truth by now. "Wouldn't have missed it for the world," Michael replied. "By the way, there's a car coming to take you to the hotel. Your bags are already packed for Barbados tomorrow." "How did you know about Barbados?" Tina asked innocently, playing along. Michael winked at her. "Just a guess. You two have a wonderful honeymoon." As promised, a sleek black car pulled up minutes later. The driver loaded their small overnight bags for the hotel while explaining that their luggage for Barbados was being handled separately. Before they got in the car, James pulled Michael into one last hug. "We still need to talk," he whispered, in his brother's ear. "I know," Michael whispered back. "When you return. For now, just enjoy." As the car pulled away, Tina leaned her head on James's shoulder. "That was the most perfect day," she said softly. "It was," James agreed, thinking of his father's cufflinks, his mother's smile, his brother's elaborate scheme to make it all happen. Absolutely perfect. The day after the wedding, close family gathered for a farewell brunch at the hotel before James and Tina left for their honeymoon. The newlyweds arrived to find a private dining room decorated with flowers matching their wedding colors. A buffet of southern breakfast favorites stretched along one wall, and mimosas were already being served. James noticed his mother deep in conversation with Michael in one corner. They stopped talking when they saw him, both smiling a little, too innocently. More secrets, James thought, but he couldn't bring himself to be upset. Not today. "There's the happy couple," Rosalind called out, hurrying over to hug them both. "How does it feel to be married?" "Wonderful," Tina answered, her face glowing with happiness. "I still can't believe how perfect yesterday was." "Everything came together nicely," Rosalind agreed, carefully avoiding her brother's knowing look. Throughout the meal, James observed his family interacting with Tina's parents and siblings. His mother had taken Tina's mom under her wing, showing her family photos on her phone. Michael was charming Tina's teenage cousins, who could barely contain their excitement at meeting the legendary basketball star. It was strange seeing these two worlds merge, his famous family and Tina's ordinary one. Yet they fit together naturally, laughing and sharing stories as if they'd known each other for years. Midway through the brunch, Michael stood and tapped his glass with a spoon. The room fell silent. "I'd like to make another toast to the newlyweds," he announced. "I said some words last night about family and how important it is. Today, I want to talk about something else. Grace." James tensed slightly. Was Michael about to reveal his involvement in the wedding? "When I think about my brother James," Michael continued, "the word that comes to mind is grace. Not the flashy kind that gets attention, but the quiet kind that holds families together." Michael turned to look directly at James. "Little brother, you've shown grace in so many ways through the years. Grace when our father died and our family was hurting. Grace when my fame put our whole family in the spotlight. Grace when life threw challenges your way." James felt Tina squeeze his hand under the table. "Most people only know one Jordan," Michael said, his voice growing softer. "But our family knows that there are many kinds of strength, many kinds of success. James, you measure success not by trophies or money, but by how you treat people and how you build a life of integrity." The room was completely silent now. Everyone focused on Michael's words. Yesterday, you and Tina began a new chapter. I've never seen you happier, and that makes all of us happy too. Michael raised his glass higher. To James and Tina, may your marriage be blessed with love, honesty, and the special grace that James has always shown to others. To James and Tina, everyone echoed, raising their glasses. As people returned to their conversations, James made his way to Michael's side. That was quite a speech, James said quietly. Michael smiled. I meant every word. Was that your way of apologizing for the secret wedding planning? James asked, keeping his voice light. That depends, Michael replied. Do I need to apologize? Before James could answer, the hotel manager approached them. Mr. and Mrs. Jordan, your car is ready whenever you'd like to leave for the airport. The rest of the brunch became a flurry of goodbyes and well wishes. Tina's parents hugged them both, her mother wiping away tears. Dolores held James for a long moment, whispering how proud his father would be. Roslyn made them promise to call. When they arrived in Barbados, finally, it was Michael's turn. The brothers embraced, clapping each other on the back. Enjoy Barbados, Michael said. The resort has your information. Everything's taken care of. Of course it is, James replied with a small smile. We'll talk when I get back. I'll be here, Michael promised. As they walked to the car, luggage already loaded by hotel staff, Tina leaned close to James. Your brother really loves you, you know. All that secret planning, it came from a good place. James nodded slowly. I know. It's complicated between us. Always has been. But at the end of the day, we're brothers. The driver held the door open for them. Before getting in, James looked back at the hotel entrance where his family stood, waving. Michael was in the center, his arm around their mother's shoulders, watching them with a smile that held a hint of uncertainty. James raised his hand in a final wave, a silent message passing between the brothers. Whatever needed to be said could wait until they returned. For now, there was Barbados, a honeymoon suite, and a week with his new wife to enjoy. As the car pulled away, James felt a strange mix of emotions. Gratitude for the perfect wedding, lingering questions about Michael's methods, and a growing acceptance that perhaps his brother's way of showing love was exactly what they had needed. What are you thinking about? Tina asked, noting his thoughtful expression. Family, James replied, and how sometimes the greatest gifts come in unexpected ways. The honeymoon in Barbados was everything James and Tina could have hoped for. Sandy Lane Resort lived up to its reputation as one of the Caribbean's most luxurious getaways. Their ocean view suite offered breathtaking vistas of turquoise waters and white sand beaches. Each morning, they woke to the sound of gentle waves, and breakfast delivered to their private balcony. They spent their days swimming in crystal-clear waters, relaxing on the beach, and exploring the island. They took a catamaran cruise along the coast, spotting sea turtles and tropical fish. They visited Harrison's Cave with its stunning limestone formations. They toured a rum distillery and sampled local cuisine at beachside restaurants. Throughout the week, James tried not to think about the conversation waiting for him back home. He focused instead on Tina's happiness, on building memories together, on starting their married life with joy. But occasionally, when Tina was napping or reading on the beach, his thoughts would drift to Michael and the elaborate scheme his brother had orchestrated. On their last night in Barbados, James and Tina returned to their suite after dinner to find a bottle of champagne and a small envelope on the coffee table. "What's this?" Tina asked, picking up the envelope. James opened it to find a note written in familiar handwriting. "Hope you enjoyed your stay. Remember what Dad always said? Family first. See you soon. MJ." "Your brother?" Tina guessed, reading over his shoulder. James nodded, setting the note aside. Even here, he's one step ahead. Does it bother you? Tina asked carefully. All. He did for the wedding? For this honeymoon? James considered the question. A week ago, his pride had been wounded, his independence threatened. But the days in paradise with Tina had given him perspective. Not as much as it did, he admitted. I still want to know why he couldn't just be straightforward about helping us. But I'm starting to understand it wasn't about control or showing off. It was his way of showing love. The next day, they flew back to Charlotte, arriving home in the early evening. A car was waiting for them at the airport, another arrangement courtesy of Michael, no doubt. As they rode toward their house, James saw a familiar black SUV parked in their driveway. Looks like Michael's waiting for us, James said, pointing it out to Tina. Do you want me to give you two some privacy to talk? She offered. James shook his head. No. Whatever needs to be said, you should hear it too. You're family now. But when they entered the house, they found not only Michael waiting in their living room, but also their mother Dolores, sister Roslyn, and brothers Larry and Ronnie. Surprise! They called out together. Welcome home! The living room had been decorated with welcome home and congratulations banners. Food was laid out on the dining table, and someone had arranged their wedding photos in a beautiful album. Tina immediately went to hug everyone while James stood in the doorway, taking in the scene. His entire family had gathered to welcome them home. Despite his resolve to have a serious talk with Michael, he couldn't help smiling. Come in, Dolores urged, pulling James into the room. Tell us all about Barbados. For the next hour, James and Tina shared stories from their honeymoon while everyone ate and drank and laughed together. Michael was quieter than usual, James noticed, watching from the edge of the group instead of commanding attention as he typically did. Eventually, as the evening wore on, family members began to leave. Roslyn had a long drive back to Wilmington. Larry and Ronnie had work early. The next morning, Dolores was staying with Roslyn and needed to get on the road. Soon, only Michael remained, helping Tina clear away the food while James carried their luggage to the bedroom. When James returned to the living room, he found Michael sitting alone, on the couch, holding an envelope. Tina went to take a shower, Michael explained. Said we should talk. James sat across from his brother. Yes, we should. Michael handed him the envelope. First, you should see this. Inside was a single sheet of paper, an itemized list of all the wedding expenses with a note at the bottom. Consider this my wedding gift to you both. No strings attached, no expectations, just love from your brother. James scanned the list, his eyes widening at the total. The venue, catering, flowers, music, photography, transportation, attire, honeymoon, everything had been covered. The amount was substantial, even for someone of Michael's wealth. Mike, this is too much, James said, looking up from the paper. It's what I wanted to do, Michael replied simply. But I know you're upset about how I did it. Not upset exactly, James clarified. Just confused. Why all the secrecy? The elaborate schemes? Why not just offer to help directly? Michael leaned forward, his hands clasped between his knees. Would you have accepted if I had? The question hung in the air between them. James wanted to say yes, of course he would have accepted help offered openly and honestly. But would he? His pride had always been as strong as Michael's competitive spirit. I don't know, James admitted finally. Maybe not. Michael nodded, as if this confirmed what he already knew. That's why. I wanted to give you and Tina the wedding you deserved. but I knew you'd struggle with accepting that kind of help. So I found another way. By manipulating vendors and creating fake contests and discounts? James challenged. By making me think it was all just lucky coincidences? I wouldn't call it manipulation, Michael defended. I made arrangements. I used my connections. I pulled some strings. But every vendor was fairly compensated. More than fairly, actually. James stood up and paced the room, processing his feelings. It's not about the money, Mike. It's about respect. Did you think I couldn't handle knowing the truth? That I'm so fragile I needed to be protected from your generosity? Michael was quiet for a long moment. Maybe I was wrong, he conceded finally. Maybe I should have just offered directly and respected whatever decision you made. But I was afraid. You? Afraid? James stopped pacing. Of what? Of you saying no, Michael admitted. Of you and Tina not having the wedding you deserved because of pride, yours or mine. Of missing the chance to do something meaningful for my little brother. The honesty in Michael's voice caught James off guard. The great Michael Jordan, afraid of rejection from his own brother? It seemed impossible, yet the vulnerability in Michael's eyes told James it was true. When Dad died, Michael continued softly, I made a promise to myself that I would look out for all of you. Mom, Roslyn, Larry, Ronnie, and especially you, since you were the youngest. I haven't always done that well. I've been busy with basketball, with business, with my own life. This wedding felt like a chance to fulfill that promise. James sat back down, the anger draining from him. You have looked out for us, Mike. Maybe not in obvious ways, but you've always been there when it really mattered. Not enough, Michael insisted. Not like Dad would have been. The mention of their father shifted something in the room. James thought of the cufflinks he'd worn at the wedding, of the values James Sr. had instilled in all his children. Dad wouldn't have cared about fancy venues or famous DJs, James said gently. He would have cared that we were together, supporting each other. Michael nodded slowly. You're right. So, are we okay? Can you forgive the way I went about this? James looked at his brother, the man revered by millions, the icon whose face appeared on billboards around the world, the legend who had redefined basketball. But in this moment, he was just Michael, his big brother, looking for forgiveness. There's nothing to forgive, James said finally. What you did came from love. That's what matters. Relief washed over Michael's face. Thank you. He hesitated before adding, and the gift? Will you accept it? James smiled. With gratitude. It gave Tina the day she deserved. That's a gift I could never repay. The brothers embraced. Decades of complicated emotions flowing between them. Admiration, envy, love, respect, and now, a new understanding. When they separated, Michael looked lighter somehow, as if a weight had been lifted. I should go, he said, standing. Let you two settle back in. At the door, Michael turned back one last time. You know, for what it's worth, I think you got the better end of the deal. How's that? James asked. Michael smiled. You found Tina. All I found was fame. After his brother left, James stood in the quiet house, thinking about the conversation and the revelation of Michael's true motives. Not control or showing off, but love and a promise to their father. Sometimes, James realized, the greatest gifts really did come in unexpected ways. 6 months passed quickly. James and Tina settled into married life, dividing their time between work and creating a home together. James's store was doing better than ever, partly due to a feature in a local business magazine that had mysteriously appeared shortly after the wedding. Tina had been promoted to lead kindergarten teacher at her school, a position she had worked toward for years. Their relationship with Michael had grown stronger since their heart-to-heart conversation. The brothers spoke more regularly, now with fewer awkward silences and more genuine connection. Michael had even visited Charlotte twice, stopping by the store to chat with customers and help James organize a youth basketball clinic for neighborhood kids. In December, Dolores invited the entire family to Chicago for a reunion at Michael's home. It would be their first Christmas gathering since the wedding, and everyone was looking forward to it. When James and Tina arrived at Michael's massive lakefront estate, they were greeted by holiday decorations that transformed the usually sleek modern home into a warm, festive retreat. A 20-foot Christmas tree dominated the main hall, decorated with ornaments that Dolores had collected over decades of family Christmases. "Welcome! Welcome!" Michael called, meeting them at the door in a sweater that looked suspiciously like the kind of ugly Christmas sweater he had always refused to wear at family gatherings. "Let me take your bags." Inside, the house was already filled with family. Rosalind chased her grandchildren around the living room. Larry and Ronnie were arguing good-naturedly about a basketball game on TV. Their mother sat by the fireplace, knitting and smiling at the scene around her. That evening, after a dinner that featured all their childhood favorites prepared by Michael's personal chef, the family gathered in the living room for drinks and conversation. The children had been put to bed, leaving the adults to catch up. Charles Oakley arrived late, having driven in from a charity event. James was always happy to see Oak, who had been like another brother growing up. "Sorry I'm late," Oakley announced, carrying a gift bag that clinked with bottles. "Traffic was terrible, but I brought the good stuff to make up for it." He began pouring drinks for everyone, mixing a special cocktail he claimed was his own recipe. Several glasses in, Oakley became more animated, telling stories about the old Bulls' days and making everyone laugh with his impersonations of former teammates. "Remember that time in Phoenix," he said to Michael, "when you and Scotty organized that surprise birthday party for Phil during the finals? Man, that was something." Michael nodded, smiling at the memory. Phil never saw it coming. Just like James never saw the wedding rescue mission coming, the room suddenly fell silent. James froze with his glass halfway to his lips. "Wedding rescue mission?" Tina asked innocently, though she already knew the truth. Oakley's face dropped as he realized what he'd said. He looked nervously between Michael and James. It's okay, Oak," Michael said after a moment. "James figured it out months ago. We've already talked about it." Oakley exhaled with relief. "Oh, good. Because that was some operation you pulled off, man. All those vendors, the coincidences, the special deals. I've never seen anything like it." Seeing that the secret was now fully in the open, Michael laughed. "It wasn't just me. Oak helped. So did Scotty, Ahmad, Phil, and about a dozen others." Rosalind raised her glass. "Don't forget me. I was the intelligence operative, getting all the wedding details from James without him suspecting." "Wait," James interrupted, looking around the room. "Just how many people were involved in this scheme?" "Pretty much everyone in this room," Larry admitted. "Plus a bunch of Michael's friends from basketball and business. Even I knew," Dolores confessed from her seat by the fire. "Though I only found out after things were already in motion." James shook his head in disbelief. "So everyone knew except me and Tina?" "Actually," Tina said softly, squeezing his hand, "I figured it out pretty early. Remember when the dress shop called about finding my exact dress on sale? The owner is my cousin's best friend. She told me what was really happening. James turned to his wife, surprised. You knew? All this time? Tina nodded. I wanted to tell you, but I could see how much it meant to Michael to help us this way. And I knew you'd work it out eventually. James looked around the room at his family. All of them in on the secret. All of them working together to give him and Tina the wedding of their dreams. Instead of feeling betrayed or manipulated, he felt overwhelmed with love. Well, he said finally, raising his glass, I guess I should thank all of you co-conspirators. Everyone laughed, the tension broken. Oakley, relieved that his slip hadn't caused problems, began sharing details about the wedding rescue mission that even James hadn't known. The DJ Jazzy Jeff thing? That was Ahmad's idea. And the honeymoon suite upgrade? That was Phil Jackson. He knows the resort owner from some meditation retreat they both attended. As the stories flowed, James learned just how extensive Michael's plan had been, how many people had contributed, how much care had gone into every detail. What he had initially seen as his brother's controlling nature revealed itself as a community effort, led by Michael but embraced by everyone who cared about them. Later that night, when most of the family had gone to bed, James found Michael on the back patio, looking out over Lake Michigan. The December air was cold, but heat lamps kept the space comfortable. Can't sleep? Michael asked as James joined him. Just thinking, James replied, about everything I learned tonight, about how many people were involved in our wedding. Are you angry? James shook his head. No, amazed, actually, that you could organize all that, that so many people would help, that Tina knew and kept the secret. She's a good one, Michael said. Knew it the first time I met her. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the moonlight on the lake. You know, James said eventually, for someone who made a career out of being in the spotlight, you did a pretty good job of staying in the background for once. Michael laughed. It wasn't easy, especially the day you almost saw me at Moorhead. Manor. That was you in the SUV? James asked. I knew it. The brothers laughed together, the sound carrying across the quiet water. Thank you, James said sincerely, not just for the wedding, but for bringing the family together like this, for remembering what Dad taught us about family coming first. Michael nodded, his eyes reflecting the same gratitude. Always, little brother. Always. That was the end of this heartwarming story about Michael Jordan's behind-the-scenes efforts to help his brother James have the perfect wedding. Where are you listening from today? I'd love to know which part of the world this story has reached. If you enjoyed this tale of family bonds and quiet generosity, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more touching stories like this one. Your support helps us create more content that celebrates kindness, family connections, and the different ways we show love to those who matter most. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and family. Spreading stories of kindness and generosity can inspire others to look for ways to help their loved ones, even if it means staying in the background sometimes. Every share helps build awareness that sometimes the greatest gifts are the ones given without expecting recognition. Thank you for listening, and we hope to bring you another inspiring story soon.